So on reflection, why did people go out in unexpected mass numbers and vote for David Cameron and the Conservatives? What was it that drew people to the Tories above Labour? Murdoch's press told us every day of the threat posed by a potential Labour and SNP deal. If you'd listened to Murdoch, then you would have thought that the sky was about to fall and the end of the world was around the corner if Miliband got in bed with the SNP. But that clearly wasn't true. Murdoch was scaring us to get his man into power again. It was politics of fear, and we fell for it hook, line and sinker. Now listen, I'm no Labour supporter, I didn't vote Labour or Tory. But what was there to fear from a Labour SNP deal? Let me tell you, a Labour SNP deal would have been a lot less fearful than what we've ended up with. Under a Labour SNP deal, would the end of austerity have been something to fear? Under a Labour SNP deal, would not spending 100 billion on Trident and spending it on much needed public services like the NHS, would that have been something to fear? Under a Labour SNP deal, there might have been a second Scottish independence referendum. Is that really something to fear? Under a Labour and SNP deal, there may just have been some compassion put back into politics. Unless of course you're a lifelong Tory, compassion is not to be feared. I'm wondering now that because people were told daily for 6 weeks what to fear, that we have ended up with something much, much worse. Something we have to genuinely fear. We have given David Cameron a mandate to do as he likes. 37% of people who voted Conservative, which was just enough to give him a majority because we were told to fear the other option, to fear compassion. Thomas Jefferson once said, "When the government fear the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny." I am very concerned that the UK is now moving into the stage where the people are beginning to fear their government for what they will do to them. David Cameron said the other day, when talking about cracking down on Islamic extremists, "For far too long we've been a passively tolerant society, saying to our citizens, as long as you obey the law, we will leave you alone." I tweeted this, saying that it could have come straight out of Hitler's Germany in 1939. That was the year that Time magazine had him as their Man of the Year, and the same time that the Daily Mail was supporting him. The rest is history. How obeying the law will no longer be enough to protect you from the police. Obeying the law will no longer be enough to guarantee you are able to live peacefully in the UK without harassment from the state. David Cameron is set to announce a string of new powers that are seen by many as a challenge to our basic civil liberties. That first line should send shivers down your spine and should leave you open-mouthed after you read it. Listen to it again. Obeying the law will no longer be enough to guarantee you are able to live peacefully in the UK without harassment from the state. Of course, the sales pitch for this legislation is aimed towards Islamic extremists, and this is the angle the BBC and the rest of the mainstream media will of course be told to take. They will say we need this liberty-zapping legislation to root out the extremists. But rest assured, this legislation is written in such a way that you and I could be deemed extremists. As the legislation is debated in the media, you will hear them quote Stalin, like William Hague did last year, when they say, "If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear."
If you are a law-abiding citizen of this country, going about your business and your personal life, you have nothing to fear. Nothing to fear about the British state or intelligence agencies listening to the contents of your phone calls or anything like that. Indeed, you'll never be aware of all the things those agencies are doing.
This is evidence alone of a creeping tyranny. Do we remember Stalin? Do we remember what he did? Having access to everything we do online will not make us safe. The government cannot make you safe. It is the government who gave away our powers to control our own borders to the EU, meaning we can't control our borders and stop potential Islamic extremists coming to this country. It is the government who, via NATO, are still arming, funding and training ISIS in our name. It is the government who helped Al-Qaeda and bombed Libya to get rid of Gaddafi and created the hellhole that this country has become, resulting in Libya now being a recruiting ground for terrorists. It is the government who need monitoring, not people like me who just point out the government corruption, the government fraud, the government treason, and government terrorist activity. The government want the Snoopers Charter to stop us being able to look into what they are doing. Islamic extremists are just a cover. They're trying to chill us into silence. Well, I won't be stopped by this threat. Remember, these are the same MPs who are threatening us, who were laughing and joking as they stole money from us via expenses. And this stealing is still going on today. But of course, if someone is exposing the government's illegal activity and does get unfairly arrested, we have the Human Rights Act to safeguard their right to a fair trial. Oh no, we don't. The Conservatives want to get rid of this as well, don't they? 13 basic rights you're going to lose under the new Conservative government. Here's a list of the human rights the Conservatives want to get rid of. The right to life. The right not to be tortured. The right not to be a slave. The right to a fair trial. The right not to be punished if you haven't broken the law. The right to private family life. The right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion. The right of freedom of expression. The right to marry and start a family. The right to peaceful enjoyment of possessions. The right to education. The right to free elections. The right not to be given to death penalty. The Tories have put the despised little shyster, Michael Gove, in charge of coming up with a new Bill of Rights. He's the new Justice Minister. I think that's Cameron's sick little joke on us all. But this is the scary part. This is the part that should make everybody sit up and realise just how evil this government truly is. And it should worry people more so than anything else the Tories want to do that we know of so far. On page 6 of an 8-page document on the human rights that the Tories released last year, it says that with regard to the new Bill of Rights, there will be a threshold below which convention rights will not be engaged. Now let me translate you that from the lawyer speak. It says this: we, the government, will decide who is and who isn't covered by the new Bill of Rights. That is spine-chilling. They're basically saying, obey us, otherwise we can torture you, disappear you, try you without people knowing, all because the government now decides who will and who will not be covered by the new Bill of Rights. If this doesn't make you scared of your government, then nothing will. Our government has been taken over. Far from Cameron comparing Putin to Hitler, he needs to look at himself when it comes to this piece of legislation. This is an utter disgrace. A scary, scary, utter disgrace. We are going to allow the government to decide who is human and whose life has meaning and who isn't human and whose life doesn't have meaning. For example, Lord Janner will of course be afforded this Bill of Rights because he's part of the establishment and part of the Westminster paedophile club. Average Joe down the street who gets caught abusing kids, the government will refuse him the Bill of Rights and they will use the excuse of the acts that he carried out. It's going to be one rule for one and one rule for another. Someone who disagrees with the government can get arrested, disappeared, not even given a trial because the government say he has no Bill of Rights because he was a domestic terrorist. And all for pointing out that the government were corrupt and taking away our liberties. This is North Korea level. Honestly, this is horrendous. This is such an abuse of power, it simply must be stopped. Bill of Rights for everyone, not just who the government say can have them. But the saddest part about this is we knew they were going to do this and we still voted them a majority. Are people beginning to regret that decision now? Israel sentences Palestinian to 9 months for Facebook post. How long before we're reading headlines like First Briton jailed for Facebook and Twitter posts criticising the government? David Cameron today said it was a great day for British justice as whoever the guy is, enter a name, was jailed today for 2 years for criticising the government about its foreign policy, following last week's terror attack in London by ISIS that killed 7 people. David Cameron also said that For too long, the government has been tolerant of people who have the ability and influence to shape public opinion against the government, and this is undermining the government in its work to catch the perpetrators of last week's attack, so therefore we had to take action. We have some very, very dark days ahead of us unless we wake up.